You're listening to the Beyond 50 radio program, and thank you for joining us today. I'm your host, Daniel Davis. Boy, I'll tell you, we get all kinds of messages when it comes to radio and television and print. Everybody always telling us what the right thing to do is when it comes to our diet. There are, I don't know, you can say billions of dollars are being spent each year to tell people what to eat, how to eat, and what to do once they're done eating. And we just kind of get really confused with the message. I mean, for crying out loud, you listen to the Oprah Winfrey Show, and she's probably got a doctor every other week on there spouting some book about what the right way to eat is to lose weight. What is the concern anyway about trying to lose weight? Is it just because we just want to look good, or is it the most important element when we do something such as trying to lose weight to feel great? Joining us here on the Beyond 50 radio program is someone that I think you really ought to listen to. This isn't one of these fad things that we're talking about here on the Beyond 50 radio program because we have no desire for fads. What we have a desire for are facts, things that actually work. And we're not going to be talking about losing weight today. We're going to be talking about doing the right thing when it comes to your diet and feeling fantastic while you're doing it. Sitting in front of me is a book called Simply Green for Life, and our guest joining us here today is Victoria Botenko. Her and her family are basically building quite a nice little lifestyle for themselves and helping people around them do the right things. And I've got to tell you, I've actually participated in this particular form of dieting, if you want to call that. And diet, when I say it here on the Beyond 50 radio program, simply means what you eat. You know, what is part of what you do when you take in the kind of energy that helps you move out through the day. And this book, Green for Life, really kind of opened me up because it made a lot of sense because the typical American diet is usually full of grains and proteins. And when people think of greens, they think mostly of things such as salads. Well, let's go ahead and break those myths today. Joining us here on the Beyond 50 radio program is the author of Green for Life. Here on the Beyond 50 radio program, we want to thank Victoria Botenko for joining us here today. And Victoria, thank you for joining us here on the program.
Good morning, Daniel.
You bet. Now, what moved you into this particular thing of greens? Let's first of all talk about what it was that you discovered and what you started doing. And what are greens when we talk about greens?
When we talk about greens, they are green leafy vegetables. The green leaves, the leafy part of the plant, of course, edible plants, the ones that have most amount of chlorophyll.
Mm-hmm.
Chlorophyll.
Okay, I got you there. Now, you started eating raw food. Now, why was that? I mean, talk about how you began this journey.
You know what, Daniel, about 15 years ago, my family started to become very ill, and finally the doctors pronounced every one of my family of four they're going to die or get in severely sickness. For example, I developed arrhythmia. This is the disease that took my father's life, and I was told by my doctor that I will die any day, or any night. And I was only 38 years old. I didn't want to die.
Who does, especially at 38?
Yeah. And my husband, he was told that he had such a big thyroid, hyperthyroid, that he will, if he doesn't perform the surgery, then he will not live past 2 months. And on top of that, he had such a bad rheumatoid arthritis that he was in pain, in tears from pain every single day, especially in the morning. And my daughter was born with asthma and allergies and was coughing horribly every night. And my son was diagnosed with juvenile diabetes.
My goodness.
And the doctors told us that all of our illnesses are incurable and we couldn't do anything. And so we should prepare for the worst and look for better medical insurance plans, and that's it. And out of despair, I started to look for alternatives, and I was searching tremendously with lots of passion. And in 2 months, I met a lady who was, I believe, the only raw foodist at that time in Colorado. That's where we lived. And she told me about raw food, and as much as it seemed ridiculous to me in the beginning, she started to explain more and more, and everything made sense. And 6 months later, my family became a raw family. There was January 21st, 1994, we became a raw family. And within a matter of weeks, we started to feel better. It was amazing. We didn't expect that to be so fast, so tremendous. We started to feel better and better and better. And since then, my daughter never had an asthmatic attack, and all of our conditions are under control. I lost 120 pounds. My son has sugar normal, and my husband is in great shape. He's an athlete now, running races, and doesn't have any trace of arthritis or thyroid problems.
So while your husband's doing this running, do you get him to run to the store quite a bit to do some shopping for you?
Yes, actually, as a matter of fact, we we like fresh produce.
Well, I'm the same way too, and I think it was a habit that I adopted even from my own mother, is that she likes to shop fresh for pretty much dinner every night, and to me, I kind of try to do the same thing a lot of times, just because you won't find a whole lot of processed foods in my cupboards, that sort of a thing. And that takes me to an interesting question to ask you here is, you look at the standard American diet, I mean, we're bombarded by messages, from one way or the other, telling us what the right thing to eat is, what the right thing to do is. And before you know it, you get a lot of mixed messages where you can almost stand sort of like a deer in headlights, like, what do I do next? And when I took a look at this, and I remember when my wife first came out with this book, I thought to myself, well, just what she was saying made sense to me, but how does one incorporate eating greens in, as you're talking about in your book, you're talking about pretty much leafy vegetables, dark vegetables, things that have a lot of chlorophyll in them, because people just don't like to sit and eat that stuff. And what's funny when it comes to people who start dieting, the first thing they start hitting is salads, but then they're eating iceberg lettuce, and there's almost no food value whatsoever in that. But when she said, well, what you do is you basically just kind of do this. We're going to go into describing what it is that you did that kind of really changed this. But I started doing what she suggested, as I guess a good husband should do, is just keep your mouth shut and do what your wife tells you to do. And I began to notice that there were some really unique differences in how I was feeling and so forth and so on. So let's talk about what the green plan is, what it is, and how you developed it.
It's interesting, Daniel, that in the beginning when we went on raw food diet, we felt great, but over the years we started to feel not perfect on a 100% raw food diet. And we did not eat a lot of greens at that time because simply we didn't like them. We almost HATE'd them. And we were wondering what's happening, what's going on. And then one time we discovered that we just don't eat enough greens when we decided to compare chimpanzee diet and human diet. And chimpanzees are very similar to humans. Their organism is very similar, but their immunity is much stronger. They, for example, cannot contract AIDS or hepatitis C or develop cancer on their natural diet. And so, but then we didn't like greens. And I conducted some research together with a medical doctor from Roseburg, Oregon, and we found out that humans don't have, modern humans don't have enough hydrochloric acid in the stomach to digest greens, to digest cellulose in greens. And that's why our body kind of develops repulsiveness towards greens, and that's why most people don't like them. So in order to make it possible to consume more greens, I developed a shake or a smoothie. I call it green smoothie. And so when we mix greens and fruit and water in a blender, it tastes sweet. It looks grossly green, but it tastes sweet and it smells and it's just so delicious. And this way people could consume a lot of greens, much more than on a regular basis average person does. But they don't really feel anything. They don't feel nauseated, and they don't feel reluctant towards eating these greens. So why greens are so important? Because imagine the green plant. The green leaves are the only thing in the world that could convert sunshine into energy. Everything else that is sugar, that everything that's carbohydrate comes initially from greens, because the chlorophyll is the basis for any carbohydrate molecule. And then the plant feeds this sugar, this carbohydrate. Half goes towards the seed and the fruit, and half goes towards the roots. Well, while I understand why the fruit has to be sweet, it's to bribe us, so we eat more fruit and spread the seeds. And so animals and squirrels and birds also. Why would the plant be so concerned to feed half of this sugar to the roots? And yes, the roots are all sweet, like we know beets, we make beet sugar from beets, and carrots and potatoes and all of them, rutabaga, they're all sweet.
Uh-huh.
Because the plants are greatly concerned about feeding the microorganisms in the soil through the tiny roots looking like hair, because there are 20 million variety of microorganisms in the soil. And these microorganisms, what they do when there are plenty of them, they grab non-organic minerals and they convert them into organic minerals. That's what constitutes the healthy, rich soil.
Wow.
And so when there are plenty of those microorganisms, then the plant can absorb those nutrients and make the plant really healthy. So we can tell that the plant is kind of feeding their own kettle underground to keep themselves healthy. And so that's why even they create some sugar out of sunshine energy and feed those microorganisms so that the plants have nutrients. Now, why would the plants need nutrients most of all? Of course, for the future baby of the plant, for the seed. So the seed would be strong because the seed has to survive bad weather, drought, frost, and digestive system of some animals. And so the seed has to be very strong. But where would the plant keep the nutrients before the seed is formed, before the seed is developed? Of course, the only place would be the green leaves. So the green leaves are the densest place, the densest source of nutrients on this planet. And all the animals and all other creatures, they consume greens first. And that is why cows don't eat other cows. Cows eat greens.
Unless they could make a cow smoothie anyway. So.
Yeah, and cows are full of protein because they consume a lot of greens. And so do the elephants and the horses and even cats and dogs. In natural environment, they consume greens. My cat loves green smoothies, by the way.
And they don't eat other cats, right?
Yeah. And so what I have discovered that after I started consuming greens in large quantities, like a quart of green smoothie every day, in addition to the diet, then my level of hydrochloric acid in my stomach normalized to such a degree that now I salivate when I look at greens. When before I felt repulsive, now I salivate. Uh-huh. When I see greens, I go to the market, I see all these beautiful luscious greens, I start to salivate. And I could just sit down and eat the package of greens without any salad dressing. I just really, really love them. Amazing.
For those of you joining us here, you're listening to the Beyond 50 radio program. I'm Daniel Davis, and we're talking with Victoria Butenko and her book, Green for Life. Now, it's really interesting what you just said, because I don't even think I've ever heard a vegetarian give such a synopsis of what green plants do and how they actually play a very symbiotic role here on planet Earth. But what's really interesting, as you were talking about it, and as I started doing the green drink, there was a green powder that I used to take. It was like sea algae. And I really enjoyed, that was actually my breakfast, but of course the company stopped selling it wherever it was, and so I was no longer having it. But people would take a look at that and they'd see me do this in the morning at work and go, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, this is a green drink," and I would explain to them what I was feeling. I said, "What's really interesting about taking this was the fact that my moods, I began to feel like things just didn't bother me anymore." Now, of course, this was a powder, so it wouldn't be as raw and active as what we're talking about, but that's what I liked better when this came along. And I think we've been doing this now probably for a couple of months, and Joy's pretty adamant about following more or less to the letter of the law what you have in your book about how to do this. Now, you were talking about some of the benefits, the simple benefits. I'd like you to talk about more of the benefits of why it's important, because when you take a look at the typical American diet, there's this suggestion that you should do something like 4 or 8 ounces of vegetables and greens daily, but nobody ever follows that. What I like about the simplicity of your program is the fact that you can concentrate even more of what's recommended into the diet, into a green smoothie. And I mean, this is something you can have some fun with, mixing fruit and so forth along with the greens, so it actually tastes pretty good itself. But I'd recommend anybody who even tries this, try not to get too crazy with the mustard greens.
Yeah, they're spicy. Well, I think that most people will find it amazing that it takes only a few seconds to make the green smoothie and how delicious it is.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? I absolutely have to say that many people will tell, I heard that it's not a good combination, greens and fruits and vegetables. That's right, you cannot mix fruits and vegetables, but the thing is the greens are not vegetable. Vegetable is something that has lots of starch, like carrots, zucchini, or broccoli. But the greens are only little leafy vegetables. They don't have no starch, and so it's excellent combination. It actually helps to digest fruit. So that question, most people ask that question.
Ah, interesting. Now, you talked about how you were beginning to build more hydrochloric acid, so you were able to salivate. Now, let's talk about the benefits of doing this green smoothie, or taking in the greens to the level. Now, what is the concentration of greens that a person gets in their drink on average, say in relation to the suggested amount that we should be having daily?
It has a lot more nutrients than anything that we suggested. And I've noticed that even people who just add 1 quart of green smoothies in the morning to the regular American diet, with eating everything else, even going to the regular restaurants for lunch, that makes a great difference, because most people are deficient. There was a study performed by American Food Administration in 2003 where they figured out that there is not even one single American who is not deficient in at least one thing. But according to my research, we are deficient, like 90% of us deficient in 90+% of nutrients. Like, for example, 88% of American adults and children are deficient severely in vitamin C. We only have 10% of what we're supposed to, barely not to develop scurvy. And we think that vitamin C, for example, exists in lemons and oranges. Average lemon or orange has 35 milligrams of vitamin C. But 100 grams of Miner's lettuce is the green that grows everywhere in Oregon. 100 grams of Miner's lettuce has 800 milligrams of vitamin C, which is 20 times more than average lemon. Greens are the richest source of vitamin C. So what I'm trying to say that only when you consume a great amount of greens, you can cover all the deficiencies. And that actually will, even in addition to whatever diet you have, if you add green smoothie, which is delicious and takes a few seconds to make, you're going to feel a lot better than when you go on any diet.
Now, here's the other thing, too, that needs to really highly be considered is that in the typical American diet, and I wouldn't say it's just America, you can see this kind of diet almost around the world as people like to adopt, the American diet. Now, one of the things that are really missing is fiber. Now, talk about why that's important and how you actually, through this, get even... Just talk about it. It's quite amazing.
Fiber has lots of benefits. I think the main benefit of fiber is that it absorbs lots of sugar, and it slows down absorption of sugar. And as you know, we are overconsume white sugar in all well-developed countries. Mm-hmm. And so-called well-developed countries. And the fiber really helps to reduce that process, and then that reduces the risk of diabetes, which is another epidemic disease now. So that's, I would say, number one. Of course, it also helps to prevent colon cancer and heart problems. Fiber is crucial. Without fiber, we cannot clean our body. I would say if you have a detox symptom, if you go on any kind of a healthy diet and you have detox symptom, that means you don't consume enough fiber. Most people consume only from 2 to 9 grams of fiber per day, when I think that we're supposed to get 50. The medical doctors say we should have 30, but I think actually we need to get like 50 grams of fiber per day, which you cannot get if you don't consume lots of fruits and vegetables. But if you will eat them in the natural state, you'll have to chew for like 6-7 hours every day.
I think that's what keeps people from doing that, is the fact that it does take a lot of effort and bulk, if you will, to get what is suggested for you to do, and that's why it turns a lot of people off, because they just can't see themselves sitting there chewing on 3 or 4 bunches of spinach, for instance.
Yeah, that's why we encourage people to use the technology. When you implement blender, then you could consume a lot more fruits and vegetables and much faster. And
Uh-huh.
it's all well blended, well chewed for you by the machinery.
Now, that's a good point to bring up, because you see this big thing that's been happening over the last 15 years or so with people juicing, because you can take 17 apples, for instance, juice them all up, and you're able to actually drink 17 apples. Now, what is the difference between what you're talking about and somebody who thinks, well, what about juicing? What is the difference between these two?
There is a place for juices also, but I think that, first of all, juices are not complete food. It's fractured food. And
Right.
one cannot live on juices for the rest of their lives. Eventually, they'll begin to have dry skin, they'll begin to feel hungry, and they will get off. But the green smoothie, I consider it's a complete diet. There's a woman in Washington State, Valerie Winters. She has her own website, who voluntarily just decided she's going to live on green smoothies. And she was living on green smoothies, I believe, for 8 months. And she says that she never felt better. Even her hair started to turn natural color. Well, I wish I was able to do this. I don't have enough willpower. I love to eat. I love to, fruits and vegetables. But this is a complete food. It's just like chewed, perfect food for humans. And when you consume so many greens, that ensures that you get everything, because greens have everything in them.
Yeah, it's just, like I said, Victoria, it's such a common sense thing that unlike a lot of the diet things that you see out there, that people are always selling books and they're like 400 pages thick, and look, diet just simply means what you take in, what you eat. And they've complicated what relatively should be a simple thing, and here you turn around and you take and bring back the simplicity of it, and it just made a lot of sense. And when you think about the benefits of doing what you're talking about, making green smoothies, and what it does for you, I just noticed that I have it for breakfast. I'm not really all that hungry early in the day, so therefore you don't get those food crashes that a lot of people will tend to feel when they maybe skip breakfast. They're just usually eating coffee or maybe having a bagel or a donut. Then they have lunch, and then they wonder why they're about to pass out at their desk. Well, doing this, you not only feel pretty energetic, but you don't feel like you want to eat. And when you do, you don't feel those kind of food crashes. And so you can see where just those benefits alone would be worth pursuing something such as doing green smoothies.
Yes. And I think it's especially very important for our children, because our children are, according to my calculation, are the 7th generation of people who live in an industrialized way of living since the beginning of 18th century, when the industrial revolution started. And our children are the mostly depleted in nutrition. And so I have did experimenting with different families, and I've been interviewing some people and some children, and I found out that some parents were able to stop giving their children such things as Ritalin and antidepressants and anti-HDD drugs, because they started to implement green smoothie in the morning, and doctors simply weaned them off. They said they don't need it anymore. So there was based on deficiency. And at this point, I'm looking for any school in Southern Oregon that would be interested in us my family coming, and for 1 week supplying green smoothie for a group of children whose parents don't mind, just for the sake of just a small experiment, and see, in addition to their lunch, not to take anything out. They could eat their chicken nuggets, but in addition to that, we want to offer each child a small cup of green smoothie if they like it, if they want it. And then we would just simply show, and we were thinking we'll just do it and put it on YouTube as a precedent. That's what parents could do. That's what people could do for the health of their children. So if anybody interested, if they could contact me through my website. Can I say the website?
Yes, absolutely.
It's rawfamily.com, and you can email to info@rawfamily.com, and we would be thrilled to do that.
Now, I know what's interesting, too, is a couple of things we haven't covered that I think is very important for people to know is one of the things in doing the green drinks is the fact that it makes the body a lot more alkaline. Now, why is that important?
As Dr. Otto Warburg, double Nobel Prize winner, he has proven in 72 years ago, in 1949, he proven that cancer cells cannot live in alkaline body. The pH of the body has to be alkaline for us to be healthy, and this is true for many, many different illnesses. So the only food that makes your body alkaline is greens. There are some foods like dates or some foods like apples or almonds that make your body slightly alkaline, but it cannot compete with all these things that make our body acid, like even loud music and traffic jam, or any meat or any cooked food makes your body acid. The only thing that's really so alkaline forming that it could kind of neutralize all the acid effect is greens, and so that's very important that we consume greens for that purpose also.
Now, there you go. And the other thing to consider, too, is because you're taking it in as a raw and you blend it, I noticed that what was really interesting is how you would see sort of a foamy look to the drink if it sits for a bit. So you're also taking in quite a bit of oxygen. Is that true?
Absolutely, yes.
I mean, just the thing is I want people who are listening to this program today, when they listen to this, they think, this just makes a lot of sense, for one, and two, it's also a lot less expensive than taking vitamin supplements, which may or may not be digestible, and they may or may not work.
And
it's just really quite interesting because, as you said, you blend it down, so basically it's all chewed, so you can literally take a bunch of cabbage, if you will, that you wouldn't normally sit and chew on, and you can blend it down and drink it down within a cup or a cup and a half, and it's just amazing. It's almost unfathomable to think about what you've just done in a nutritious way to yourself to really improve your health. So when you think about Popeye, you know that cartoon was actually making sense.
Yes, and supplements are supplements. They're not food. And
right.
the blended greens are still food.
Mm-hmm. Now, talk about what are some of the greens that you would suggest to get, and when you go to put the smoothie together, how do you do this? Because it's really kind of easy to do, but explain, what are some of the really good greens to get, and how you put this drink together?
Well, of course, not cabbage. Many people ask me, how about green cabbage? It's not really green. It doesn't have a lot of chlorophyll. I would will suggest to take any greens that they sell in the store, like spinach, collard greens, chard, kale, all kinds of kale, baby greens, any sprouts, dandelions, and at this time of year you can collect mindless lettuce. Please make sure that you collect particularly mindless lettuce, not something that's poisonous. Go on a wild edible walk, and then you can pick up chickweed and stinging nettles, things like this. But I found out about 34 different variety of greens available to every American, and I list them in my book, Green for Life, so you can look it up. Edible greens. That's what. And also, you can go to farmers market and ask for the tops of carrots. They could be given to you for free very often.
Oh, really? Well, there you go. And leave the carrot behind.
Yeah, and the same about the beets. This is a treasure.
Oh,
and in Ashland, Oregon, we actually ask our farmers, and they already know. They bring us the weeds that grow together in their garden with the vegetables, because weeds actually have more nutrients because they have longer roots. Uh-huh. And they even sell them in the summer for $2 a bunch because they're in such a demand here.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. And now putting the drink together, how is that? I suggest that you start with 40% greens and 60% fruit, and then eventually you will notice that you want more greens and less fruit. But in the beginning, you put as much fruit as necessary just to be able to consume greens. Uh-huh. And so 60% fruit, like a pear or apple or banana or mango, pineapple, and then 40% of greens, volume-wise, and then some water, 2 cups, 3 cups water, and then blend it in a blender. I suggest that you have a high-power blender, super blender like Vitamix or K-Tac, Blend Tac, but even regular blender will work. And then you blend it for like 30 seconds to 2 minutes, depending on how strong is your blender, and then you begin to sip it. Don't drink it like once quickly.
take with you in the car or to your computer and sip, 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 sip while you're working, and you'll feel the difference.
That's just, it's, again, I can't encourage people enough just to consider trying this, because it's amazing how it also begins to curb a lot of your cravings for junk. You just don't even want it anymore. And that it's really, in the long term, very inexpensive to follow this diet. The benefits are just incredible, as we talked about earlier in the program. You begin to build more hydrochloric acid within your stomach, which is highly important. Your body becomes more alkaline. As you said, that really curves off a lot of types of sicknesses, and cancer, forget it. It just doesn't even exist. You keep hearing about this fight with cancer on and on and on, but then they're always talking about drugs or chemotherapy one way or the other. But you're seeing just this tremendous movement of people starting to take more personal responsibility for what they do with themselves to keep themselves healthy. And then here you come along with one of the most common sense books that I've seen out there when it comes to diet, and I can't encourage people enough. Now, before we go, I'd like you to talk a little bit about a study that you did in Roseburg.
Well, I noticed that my symptoms of hydrochloric acid being low started to reverse, and I wanted to have a proof that it was true. So I talked to Dr. Paul Fieber from Roseburg, who was treating people who had problems with acid reflux or low hydrochloric acid in the stomachs. And he said, oh, sure. And he talked to his patients, and 28 people volunteered from Roseburg to participate in our experiment. So what we did for 1 month, my family made and delivered enough green smoothies so that every one of 28 people had 1 quart of green smoothie. Whatever blend we made different every day. And we delivered it from Ashland, 120 miles one way, as you know, for 1 month in 2004. And after 1 month, Dr. Fieber retested their their pH of the stomach. And amazingly, 68.8% of participants had improved level of hydrochloric acid in the stomach. Some of them didn't have to take pills anymore for the rest of their life. And so many people ended up buying good blenders, and they still do in the green smoothies.
Well, that's great. Well, Victoria, I'd like to thank you for joining us here on the program today. It's been a pleasure to talk with you, and it sounds like your kids are hooked, and you've kind of actually built a really nice little family business out of helping others just become healthy. Now, that's got to be pretty encouraging.
Yes, thank you very much. And I just want to say last thing that I'm proud to say that in Oregon, in Portland, they're now being organized Raw Network of Oregon. Somebody named Amy Porter is putting it together. So pretty soon everybody will be able to check out the book on raw foods, to taste the green smoothie, just go to a lecture. So it's happening. Now hundreds of thousands of people will be involved in that.
Well, very good. Well, again, Victoria Botenko, thank you for joining us here on the Beyond 50 radio program. The book is Green for Life. It's pretty small, pretty simple, but that's always sometimes the best thing, because the simplest usually is better from point A to point B. And thank you, Victoria, for joining us here on the Beyond 50 radio program.
Thank you, Daniel.
You bet. I want to thank you, the listeners out there, for joining us today. I'm Daniel Davis, and again, you can also find out more about Green for Life and what you can do when it comes to getting your diet moving in the right direction with a lot of common sense instead of a lot of hype. Just simply visit our website, beyond50radio.com. That is 50 with a 50, beyond50radio.com, and sign up for our free weekly e-newsletter, and also check out our blog where we kind of go into a little bit more detail about our shows, and you can even hear some of our past recordings as well. Also, be sure to encourage your friends to join us as well. I'm going to be coming at you live this Friday from 12 noon to 1, so be sure to join us. I'm Daniel Davis. Thank you for joining us today, and remember, live your day past halfway.